Vanessa Nakate, thank you very much for coming to our studio. At the moment, the world is 1.2% degrees above industrial levels of warming. Yesterday, perhaps the most respected scientists warned that it could go to 2.4 degrees. What does that mean to you?
That is a death sentence for communities like mine. There's some connections that we've been trying to help people understand, that there is an actual disconnection between 1.5 and what is happening on the ground. Many of us think that 1.5 is our ultimate salvation, but it's important for people to know that even at 1.2 degrees, very many people, very many communities are facing some of the worst impacts of the climate crisis. And the fact is, at 1.5, it still won't be safe for communities like mine, communities across Africa, communities across the global south.
Even at 1.5?
Even at 1.5. So to know that we are on a pathway to 2.4, it is devastating. That is a death sentence for communities like mine.
What would happen to communities like yours?
The already existing climate disasters will only escalate. I can tell you for sure, because of the rising global temperatures, the weather patterns are changing, and we are experiencing extreme weather events, from floods to droughts to landslides to hurricanes, and this is only going to get worse as we move towards 2.4 degrees.
Are the people in your communities, the communities that you represent, are they aware of this danger?
Many people actually have no idea about what is happening. Many farmers, they know that they cannot predict the weather patterns anymore. They cannot predict when the rainfall is coming or when they will have their harvests. So they have no much idea about what 1.5 is or what 2.4 is, or what global warming really is. And that is another sad reality, that people are walking into more disasters without realizing that it's only going to get worse.
When you look at what the conference down the road is doing, you know, an incredible gathering of global leaders, how have they been doing so far? And how do you think this conference will be remembered?
They've been making pledges, they've been giving promises, they've been making commitments, but it's important to note that commitments will not reduce CO2. Pledges will not stop the warming of the planet. Promises will not stop the suffering of the people on the front lines. What will stop people from suffering, what will stop the warming of the planet, and what will reduce emissions will be real action. So what we are seeing at the conference is commitments. But what we are not seeing is the real action that will follow after those commitments. There are no plans, there are no specific plans to phase out fossil fuels like coal, like oil and gas. And yet we cannot eat coal, we cannot drink oil, and we cannot breathe gas.
So would you agree with your friend Greta Thunberg that this event here is an exercise in greenwashing?
I can say that I will only see the success of the event if I see real action. And what I've seen is commitments. This is not the first COP that we've had. We have had 25 COPs, but for 25 COPs, emissions have continued to rise. So this is a place where businesses, corporations, governments are going to give false hope to people, false hope to communities, false promises, but this is not followed by action. But we want the leaders to prove us wrong. We want governments to prove us wrong with their actions, with their faithfulness to the commitments that they are making. But however, even the commitments are only leading us to a 2.4 pathway, which is still dangerous for so many communities.
There are many people in the climate movement who believe that what's going on there is, as Greta said, blah, blah, blah. But do you think that there are some governments in there, some leaders, who are trying to make a real difference, but because they're democratically elected, because change is always incremental in politics, they just can't get to the place where you want them to be?
I think that it's a matter of priorities. I've been having a discussion before this interview, and I've learned from one of the people on the panel, and they were talking about how billions of money is put in fossil fuels or in other sectors of economies. So what the leaders are doing right now, it's a matter of priority. Will they rise up for the people? Will they rise up for the planet? And it will be through reducing emissions with real action and not just commitments, and also providing climate finance for communities that are on the front lines of this crisis.
So it's about adding pressure. Do you think that the United Nations should declare a level 3, systematic climate emergency, as they did for the pandemic, for COVID?
I think we're already in a climate emergency.
But if they declare it as such, it means that there might be funds, it raises the awareness to a new level as well.
I'm not sure if they declare it, it will lead to, the action that we are looking for. Because I see that the change that we are looking for is what people have been talking about. Change is on the streets. Change is in the young people who are protesting and striking and demanding for climate action. So if we have been striking for all these years and we haven't been listened to, then I don't think a declaration will be what will cause change if the people themselves are not being listened to.
Where does your movement go from here after this conference is over?
We continue to strike, we continue to organize, we continue to mobilize, because we cannot give up. We cannot give up on what we have achieved so far, on what we have done so far. We've come a long way, but not just us. There are people who are before us. There are movements that were there before us, and they have been asking for the same thing: climate justice, climate action. So we cannot give up now, for ourselves and also for the coming generations.
There are dozens of people in this conference who represent the big oil companies in the world, the big, petrol giants. What do you say to them?
We cannot eat coal, we cannot drink oil, and we cannot breathe so-called natural gas. It's time to rise up for the people and for the planet. There is no future in the fossil fuel industry, because this industry continues to fuel the warming of the planet.
Is there a danger in this that people like you become too cynical if you don't see enough change on the political level?
Cynical? What do you mean by cynical?
Cynical, that you give up. You give up trying to change the people that, decide things, that, that are in government at the moment. And these are the governments that we have. We can't have other governments at the moment.
Well, I can say that there is a frustration that comes when you continue to organize and not see action from leaders, and while disasters continue to happen. I have been at that place where I felt like I was striking every Friday. I felt like the climate disasters continue to happen, and I also felt like leaders continued not to do anything, and I didn't have the strength to strike anymore. But when I got out of that situation, and I know that many young people face this, depression and frustration because of inaction. But when I got out of that situation, I chose to believe and understand that I am not doing this alone. There have been people who were doing this before I started doing it. And there are millions of young people from across the world who are organizing. So I know that if I cannot get the energy or the strength to go to the streets this Friday, I know that someone else there outside in my country or in another part of the world is still organizing and striking. And I think this is the beautiful thing about this movement, to know that when you need to rest, another person will be there demanding for justice.
Our Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who's famous for being a booster, an optimist, is turning up here this afternoon.
Really?
Yeah. What would you say to him?
Well, I would first of all ask him what he thinks about the Stop Cambo, campaign, because what I've heard from him is, he's picking some words from young people and how history will judge leaders if they don't do anything. And yet we are practically, not just me, but many activists in the UK are practically asking him to stop the Cambo oil field and all the other oil fields that are in process, to be given, I think, license in the UK, and he's still not giving clear answers to that.
You think he's being hypocritical?
I think that is being hypocritical. And again, it's something so many leaders are, doing or being. They are giving all these fancy, good to listen to speeches, but then the action that follows, that is where the challenge is. That is why it is hard for us to believe in their commitments or their speeches or their promises, because for so long they have spoken, but again, for so long they haven't taken action.
I want to end on a delicate note. There was a famous picture of the Davos summit a few years ago, and you were cut out of that picture, and you were very upset by that. First of all, how do you feel now? And secondly, is the problem here that people from the Global South, and you represent the Global South, are not being heard in this particular crisis?
First of all, I don't represent the Global South. And I think it's important for people to know that the climate movement has many faces. You know, many young people from different parts of the world, from different parts of the Global South, from different parts of Africa are speaking up and rising up. And I think that, you know, it's important to see the movement that way, not the movement having a specific kind of, you know, representation. And about the photo, I can say that before coming to the COP, I was feeling like that is a place that I have chosen to forgive the AP for what had happened. And I'm always brought back to the same place, being asked the same question, being asked how I felt. Yeah, it's,
okay.
but I can say that on the first day of the COP, I think the first day I attended the COP, it was a similar experience happened, but not with the AP, but with more media, not just one, more media.
What happened?
Let's say, again, I was removed from a picture. Yeah, so I don't want to go into details. You can do some research about it, but I was removed from a picture again, and people just kept sharing these tweets with me saying, they have done this again. They haven't mentioned you. They have removed you from this picture. What do you think? And my answer is, I have no words, because I have already spoken about, you know, the erasure of voices, especially from the Global South. We won't have climate justice if the voices from the front lines are not being listened to, platformed, or amplified.
Well, you're not being cut out of this picture, I promise you. Finally, will you go into politics?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not a fan of politics.
You don't want to go into politics? I mean, take the movement into, you know, off the streets and into parliaments, into the United Nations, or does it have to stay on the street at the moment?
I think it really depends, because you may find some people who may want to take their activism into politics or into organizations, and as long as they stay, you know, with the same, I'm looking for the word, with the same demands for, you know, for justice. Sometimes politics changes people, so I'm not so much of a fan of politics, but I would say that if someone I know who is advocating for the lives of the people and for the planet went into politics, I would support them.
Vanessa Nakate, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.